Welcome back, Logan. For this installment of Math on Your Couch, we're going to go back and review solving quadratics and kind of talk about what technique you should be using. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this by factoring first. So we're going to take a look at this problem using the factoring technique. I am not going to complete the square, and then I'm also going to look at it from the quadratic formulas technique. Quadratic formula. Now, I kind of want to just compare these two. Factoring, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to break this guy down to either 6x times x or 2x times 3x. And then you're going to want to break down this guy, the 5, to either 5 times 1 or, well, that's it. 5 times 1 is the only option. So now what I want to do is I want to set up my factors, okay? So I'm going to set up my factors, and I am going to place in here, I'm going to go with 6x and x just to show that it doesn't work, 6x and x, and then I'm going to try with 5 and 1. So I'm going to put a 5 there and a 1 there, and you'll notice that when I multiply that, I get 5x, and when I multiply that, I get 6x. And since the back number is minus, that means I need to subtract them, which will not give me 7. So that right there is going to be the wrong technique for this problem, or the wrong numbers for this problem. So now that 5, 1 doesn't work, I'm going to try 1, 5 and see what happens there. This is going to give me 1x, and this is going to give me 30x. And once again, I realize that because it's minus on the last number, I need to subtract them. And those two numbers do not subtract to 7, they subtract to 29, so that does not work. All right, so instead of using 5 and 1, I tried 1 and 5. That didn't work. Instead of using 6x and x, I'm going to go back and use 2x and 3x. So I'm going to put the 2x here and the 3x here. And then I'm going to try 5 and 1 again. So I'm going to place 5 here and 1 here. And then we're going to test it. Let's see if this thing works here. So we get 3x over here, and we get 10x over here. And very quickly, remembering that the minus sign on the end means we have to subtract the 3x and the 10x, which would give us 7x. To get a negative 7x, you'd want the 10 to be negative and the 3 to be positive. So this would give me a negative 5 here and a positive 3 over here. And then once I have that, I can say let it equal to 0 and solve it. So now we can say 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. And we have a second equation, 3x minus 5 is equal to 0. Solving this one here, subtracting the 1 from both sides gives us 2x equals negative 1. And dividing both sides by 2 would give us x equals negative 1/2. We do the same exact thing on this problem. When I say same thing, I mean solve it. We're going to add 5 to both sides of the equation. So we add 5. This gives us 3x equals 5, but then we're going to divide by 3 to get rid of the 3 on the left side, and this yields x equals 5/3. So we do have two solutions. We have x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 5/3. Ideally, you're going to practice factoring on today's examples, today's problems, because that's where we're moving next week. So next week we are going to be talking about that. However, some of you are struggling with the quadratic formula, so you might want to use the quadratic formula instead. And this is how the quadratic formula works. If you remember, it's x equals the opposite of b. Okay, so I'm going to write down the opposite of b, plus or minus, right? Unsure. Plus or minus the square root, the radical party, the square root of b to the power of 2 minus 4, right? That's square boy. He's going to lose out on 4. That's right. He's going to lose out on 4a and c. Awesome jukes. Now the whole thing is over, so divided by 2a. The whole party's over at 2 a.m. And all we're going to do is take this equation and plug in the a, the b, and the c. Now you'll notice for us that a is 6, and b is negative 7, and c comes out to negative 5. So we're just going to plug those numbers in. Now this gives us x equals the opposite of b. So instead of writing negative 7, I'm going to write the opposite of that. I'm going to write 7 plus or minus the square root b squared. Now I'm actually going to write this out because I do recognize that I forget to write these things out sometimes. So 7 squared minus 4 times a times c. So times 6 times, and as you can tell right now, the quadratic formula does take time. It's not a quick and easy method for solving. However, it is a method that will always work as long as your math is on point. And then divided by 2 times A, which is 6 in this problem. All right, now for the simplifying. So we're going to go through the problem and simplify it. That means do any addition, subtraction, multiplication. All right, so I'm going to look to see if I can do any addition, subtraction, or multiplication. So the negative 7 to the power of 2 is multiplication, so that's going to give us 49. And then it's going to be negative 4 times 6 times negative 5. Now, the order in which you multiply that is up to you. So I'm going to multiply, and remember, negative times a negative is positive, so we're going to get plus. And I'm going to multiply 4 times 5, which is 20, and then 20 times 6 is the same as saying 2 times 6 times 10. So that's going to be 120 divided by 12, because I can multiply the 2 and the 6. Next, do any of the simplifying. That means add, subtract, divide, okay, or multiply. I have addition here, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. So we get x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 169 divided by 12. Now we can simplify this a little bit further because the square root of 169 is going to come out to 13. So I have 7 plus or minus the 13 over 12. Now at this stage, you're going to have two problems. The first problem is where you add them, 7 plus 13 over 12. And the second one is where you're going to subtract them, 7 minus 13 over 12. So we have two answers from that unsureness of the problem. So this gives us 20 over 12, which we can reduce by 4, which gives us 5 over 3. Notice it matches right over here. And this one here is negative 6 over 12, which reduces to negative 1/2, which is the same exact thing we have over here. So we get the same exact answers using two different techniques. You get to decide. Now here's the thing. Like I said, quadratic formula always works, just takes a little bit longer. Oftentimes I will skip writing the formula and I will skip doing that to the straight simplifying part right there. But if you're not capable of doing that, then maybe quadratic formula is not the best bet, but you definitely want to practice it because there are some problems where quadratic formula is really, really useful. But factoring, if you can factor it, if it's possible, I would suggest factoring it. It is one of the faster methods. It's also really good for building skills of multiplying, dividing, and then doing just mental math in your head, just doing mental math in general. All right, if you have any questions, go ahead and give me a holler on email or on Google Classroom. You can also stop by virtual office hours, and I'm sure to help you out there. Other than that, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys